what is defensible space and why do you think it's so critical during these wildfires to have defensible space?
It is the buffer you create between a building on your property and the grass, trees, shrubs, or any wildland area that surround it. It really is your first and last defense to protect your home with an oncoming wildfire. So anything that you can do to create that space and distance of vegetation and anything combustible that can damage your house is an important first step.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to Rooted in Care, where we amplify the voices of our clients and dive into how tree care plays an integral role in our everyday lives.
Whether you're familiar with A+ Tree or new to our community, we're here to bring the service industry together to explore the deep-rooted connection between people, trees, and the environment.
I'm Chantel Davis, Chief Revenue Officer at A+ Tree.
I'm Buddy Marshall, VP of Commercial Sales at A+.
We'll dig into what matters most to you. Your input shapes how tree care enhances the beauty of our communities while protecting our natural surroundings.
Let's get to the root of thoughtful tree care for your property, your city, your home. Hello, everyone. It's Buddy Marshall and Chantel Davis. We would like to introduce Heather McCulley today. She is the Deputy Chief for Wildfire Preparedness from CAL FIRE.
Awesome.
Welcome, Heather. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
so
appreciate the invite.
Today's guest plays a key role in wildfire preparedness and prevention, helping communities stay informed and safe. So, Heather, let's start off with, I want to ask you a couple of questions. So you spent over 28 years fighting fires, both on the front lines and behind the scenes. How has this experience prepared you to lead CAL FIRE's wildfire preparedness efforts?
Well, as a firefighter, I think every fireman in the fire service is a fire prevention specialist. We're always doing local orientation, doing inspections, always looking at property and the landscape to see and always determining whether or not, what would a fire do in this circumstance. We're always training for that. As a firefighter, you go to school, you go to your academies, you do all of that stuff, but you're always learning. You're always taking classes to get better. Things are always changing, and it's always important to make sure that you're always staying current with that. So my career as a firefighter, I came in 1991 where there weren't a lot of positions available. There were a lot of seasonal positions, but not permanent positions. And that really is what every firefighter is looking for. So our seasons could run in Northern California 1 to 3 months, all the way up to a 9-month season. And then you have to get laid off as a seasonal for 3 months, and then you come back. So I did that. I spent 4 seasons in Northern California, and then I moved down to Southern California and did 4 seasons in the San Bernardino unit. And then I went permanent in Riverside unit. All the different types of areas, up in the timber to regular wildland. And then I was able to promote into an engineer position where it was a 1-person engine company, which we'll talk about that later because you asked me a question about that later. It's very interesting, to working in a Schedule A contract, which is like what you would consider like a normal municipal fire department. So I did that for 15 years in the Riverside unit out in the desert area, and worked around trucks, fire trucks, and hazmat, and just every step of the way. So I really do feel like I'm well-rounded. When this opportunity came up, it was first as an assistant chief, promoting from a battalion chief and to oversee the Defensible Space program. And I really felt comfortable walking into that because I know how important defensible space is. And I had a great supervisor that really took me under his wing and pushed this program so far. And I was able to promote again to my position now where I oversee defensible space. So it's been a great career, and I've loved every minute of it.
That's so awesome. I've always asked you if we could take a step back.
Yes.
I think it's what a remarkable career that you've had over 28 years. However, what I would love to know, especially for a lot of our female viewers, how did you get started in CAL FIRE? What made you want to get into the fire department? Because I know for me, that's really exciting to see everything that you've accomplished.
Well, for me, growing up in Northern California, I didn't know what I was going to do. I knew that my family couldn't afford for me to go to a 4-year college. And my dad's advice was always make sure you have a job that can support yourself and 2 kids and make sure you love your job. So I was fortunate enough that my high school offered a regional occupational program that actually had fire training. And I just so happened to have 2 friends that were doing it my junior year. And it just sounded, wow. Usually firefighters are always generational. And I don't have anyone in my family, but I did know that I didn't want to be stuck in an office, which I am doing now, and that I wanted to be outside and to be able to help others. And so my plan was to go through the ROP program my senior year. And if I didn't like that, then I was going to go into the Navy. And I had a family friend that went in the Navy, and she just talked it up, and it just sounded great. Well, I absolutely fell in love with firefighting, everything about it. And when you're in ROP, you get to do ride-outs. And one of the ride-outs was you could either do it with our city department, City of Reading, or you could do it with the Cal Fire. And everyone said, make sure you go Cal Fire because that's where you get hired. So I thought, okay, great. Well, when I went in to do my ride-outs, I had an amazing engineer that was just so fun and such a great teacher that it just made me fall in love with firefighting and Cal Fire. So that really was my jump off point. And I'm so thankful that I loved it because I am very seasick and I would have been miserable if I went to the Navy. I didn't find out till I was out of school that I'm terribly airsick, seasick, you name it.
You picked the right career. You love what you do. And that's honestly so remarkable to hear. I have a house full of firefighters and I always love to ask them why they did it. And they always say because they love what they do. So
that's usually the first thing I ask new recruits that come in is what drew you to the fire service? Why are you doing it? Because you really can't tell folks that are in it for the money and people are in it for the job. And I don't know if you would have such a good time if you were just in it for the money, because the money is great, to support a family, but you're not going to get rich doing it. So it's always interesting to hear the different reasons why people get involved. And usually it's just public service, wanting to be helpful to others and to make a difference. And I love that. That just makes it even better. And I always say that when we go on calls that people are happy to see us, they're not so happy to see the police officers because we always get teased from the police officers.
Right. I love the fact that you said that because I have family members that are police officers. So it's very generational. And generation after generation, and that's interesting that there's no one in your family that was a firefighter.
I have police officers. My brother-in-law is a police officer. My uncle is a police officer. I think my other uncle is like Secret Service. But it was just funny because when we're out and about, they always, the firemen always, or the policemen always tease us about, we don't get to drive fast. I said, yeah, but at least they like us coming. They appreciate us when we get there. 9 times out of 10, they're happy to see us, not you.
So Heather, can you do me a favor for our listeners and our viewers, and for me, and maybe for Chantel? Can you tell me what the difference, or give me the difference between what you do, not what you do, but what Cal Fire is versus just a municipal fire department? What's the difference? Because some of our viewers are not from California.
Yeah. The big difference with Cal Fire was originally created to protect the watershed on the state responsibility area. You'll hear me probably talk about SRA in the future. And that was our mission, was to protect the watershed lands and to protect state responsibility. So that's why we have always been predominantly wildland. That's why our engines, when you see them out and about, are the shorter, because they can go into the 4-wheel driving areas, off-roading areas, and quick attack type of things. And we're all throughout the state. We go from the Oregon border all the way down to the Mexican border, to the ocean, and to Nevada. So we consist of 21 units, and we contract with 6 contract counties. The state pays us to protect our state responsibility areas. And then we also contract with city and county. So we are a municipal department when we contract with those cities and counties. So that's why you'll see Cal Fire logos on fire engines in cities. San Diego County has us, Riverside has us, parts of Santa Clara. And all municipal is more of a city department where they're jurisdictional. So you'll have counties, cities, and fire districts that have their own fire departments. Now, they will respond within their own city limits, county limits, but they also will do mutual aid with each other. And then we also contract with those municipal departments to come help us fight fires. That's why you'll see, the city of LA, the county of Los Angeles, you'll see them up in Northern California because we request them to come help us. And so they will respond all through the state as well if they accept the assignment to come help us with large incidents.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that clarification. I appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely.
I think that's really helpful too, because a lot of times, people worry when they live in wildfire areas, is it just their local municipal city that's going to come out, or is all the resource going to come? So when you say, no matter if you're in Northern California, Southern California, when there's a fire, right, you guys will show up. And so I think that's super important for our viewers to know and understand. Before we kind of dive into our topic today, which is all about defensible space and how we can educate our viewers on the importance of it, I like to keep it a little light and fun. So one of the things I would love to know is, you've had a lot of different positions over your career. Which one was your favorite? And do you have a fun story that you want to share with the viewers?
I was trying to think of what my favorite is, because my mom used to tell me I needed to write a book, but some of them aren't. they don't look too favorably on me. But my favorite job would probably be fire captain. Fire captain was as high as I thought I was going to go. That was my goal. Anything above that was just going to be the cherry on top. But I always wanted to be a fire captain because our fire captains always knew everything. And I'd always ask him, I'd ask him a question and they'd just pop off and tell me what it was. And it was like, how did you know that? And they're like, I'm a fire captain. I'm supposed to know that. I'm the one that's supposed to know everything. They ran the fire station. They ran the fire incidents. They were just the dirty, get down, fun firemen. And when I was coming up, those were all grizzled firemen from, the Vietnam War. So you knew they were tough. I mean, my very first day, my station was so far out in the wilderness that I drove and drove and drove, and I was like 5 minutes late, and the captain was sitting on the bumper of the engine waiting for me. I was mortified. He was like, why are you late? And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so far out, I didn't realize, and he's like, throw your stuff on the engine, get your stuff going. And he threw my out-of-county bag. So we have bags that will last us for clothes for an entire week. He threw it on the roof of the station, and he watched me make my bed and ripped it all apart. But I didn't do it right. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the introduction. Here we go. But he was a great captain and we had a great time. But that was never be late. That was my lesson, was early is on time and on time is late is my number one. So the first thing I do is watch to see what time people show up.
You gave me PTSD because my running joke is I'm always 20 minutes late. And so he's always early, right? And so he tells me an hour before we have to be anywhere. So I'm actually on time. So now I know where that came from. So thank you for that, because I was like, why are you giving me a hard time? So.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was, I've had so many fun things. I remember, oh my gosh, so embarrassing. It was my first fire, and we had to put in hose lace to get the hose all the way around the fire. And every time I bent over, I had this searing heat go up my back, and I literally thought I was on fire. And it happened 2 more times. And I turned around to my captain. I'm like, am I on fire? He's like, what are you talking about? And I go, okay. I turn around, I go to clamp the hose, so we could put another section of hose in. I bent over and I went to tip forward, and water came down each side of my neck, and my water ball caps came off. And every time I bent over, hot water, because I was in Redding, it's 110 up there, would run up my back, and that's why I felt the searing heat.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness.
My captain thought I was crazy. But that was my first fire. It was pretty funny.
Gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. The stories we couldn't think that up. We couldn't make them.
Oh no. And that was my mom was so proud of me being a fireman, and she just loved those stories. And it really I really did think I was on fire. Or at least too close to the fire. And the fire was there. And my captain's like, you're wearing fire resistive Nomex. What are you talking
What are you talking about? Oh, wait, awesome. Thank you so much for the story. So as Chantel mentioned earlier, we're here to talk about defensible space and property protection. It's something that's critical for every homeowner and business owner. It's defensible space. Let's dig in. Let's dive in. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's go.
All
I'm
right.
ready. We've got hundreds of questions, right, buddy? No, this is such a hot topic. I think to preface it, and Buddy said it well, over the last, I would say 5-6 years, it's not if there's going to be a fire, it's when, right? Especially in California, even in Oregon and Washington, we're starting to see fires. And so one of the words that keeps going out that people are hearing is defensible space. And people don't know what that means. And so could you maybe explain to our listeners, not getting too technical, right? Because we want to make sure that they can apply it. But what is defensible space and why do you think it's so critical during these wildfires to have defensible space?
Well, I'll give you the actual definition, and it is the buffer you create between a building on your property and the grass, trees, shrubs, or any wildland area that surround it. This space is needed to slow or stop the spread of fire. So that's really it in a nutshell, and it really is your first and last defense to protect your home with an oncoming wildfire. So anything that you can do to make your house more home hardened and create that space and distance of vegetation and anything combustible that can damage your house is an important first step. And that's why we are pushing so hard on the fire prevention side for CAL FIRE is we've always had the fire prevention component, but it's always been a more operational based type of thinking. And it hasn't been for the last 10 years that our executive staff and researchers have determined we need to prepare before the fire gets there. And maybe if we prepare before the fire gets there, that gives us more of a chance to defend those homes when we get there. Because like I've said before, CAL FIRE only has about 650 engines in our department. And then you count all the other engines that we request assistance from, but you can't have a fire engine in front of every single house. So it's up to the homeowner to give us the best defense to come in there and to help the house survive the oncoming wildfire. And so that's really our focus now. And that's why we've created an entire division called the Community Wildfire Preparedness Mitigation Division that is solely around fire prevention. And we're under the Office of State Fire Marshal, which is the ones that are creating the laws and taking the legislation that our legislators and our executive staff and governor are bringing forward. And defensible space and damage inspection, which are both under my purview, is we're taking what happens after the fire comes and we go and do the damage inspection and did what we asked the homeowner to do in legislation and regulations, did that actually help homes survive the wildfire?
Very nice. Very nice. So another question is, we've been hearing a lot about Zone 0.
Yes.
Can you break that down and tell us what it means and why that's a new priority?
Well, Zone 0 really came about probably in the last 5 to 10 years. There's been a lot of studies out about that first 5 feet. Defensible space has been around since 1965, and we really did concentrate on what we call Zone 1 and Zone 2. Zone 1 was 5 feet to 30 feet from your structure, thinning out the vegetation, trimming your trees, that type of thing. And then Zone 2 was 30 feet to 100 feet. Now that's creating, if you're out in the wildland, out in a rural area, that really does give you the space to slow that fire down before it gets to your house. The problem is houses were still burning down and we couldn't understand, okay, we're doing this Zone 1 and Zone 2, what's going on? And the cause was that first 0 to 5 feet. Now, when you think about your home, what do you put up against your home to make it look pretty? You want it to look nice. You want an introduction to your home to showcase how proud you are of your home. And what you're doing is you're putting this beautiful green lawn down. You're putting all these beautiful shrubs in front of your house, putting them under your window so you can enjoy them too, because you took the time to plant them. You want to actually see them. Unfortunately, our windows are the weakest point on our structure. When a wildfire comes through, you have this big opening that's only protected by glass. And a lot of homes built before 2010 were single pane glass. And in the research, they've shown that broken glass is one of the main contributors coming through the windows for the destruction of the homes. The other thing is people don't realize this, but when wildfires are coming through, they're coming through with 30 to 70 mile an hour winds, and all of that debris that's coming off of your zone 1 and zone 2 are going and pushing right up against your home. You'll get embers miles before the fire ever reaches your house, and those embers are catching that debris that's up against your house. And let's say the embers or debris comes up under the beautiful shrub you have that maybe you haven't taken such good care of under your window, catches that on fire, breaks the window, it's in your house, it's gone. The vents of your house as well is another main contributor. Attic, you have those big gable vents to keep your attic ventilated. The embers go right into there. And if you don't have the proper vent screens in there, it's a perfect opportunity for a fire to start. And once you get a fire in your attic without firefighter intervention, your house is going to burn down.
That's crazy.
So that's why we started the home hardening program, is to really get the word out and to assist homeowners in hardening their home. So getting those better vents, getting a better roof system, looking at your siding, look at the gutters. The gutters is crazy. We always tease about, cleaning out your gutters, but it really is important to clean those gutters out, because the vegetation that's left in them are the ones that catch fire and start your house on fire. So that's really where Zone 0 came from and why it's so important.
That was so good. I had so many different thoughts in my head, Heather, while you were talking. I think the first one was, I have like 35 windows in my house. So
yes,
it was like, oh, okay, good to know.
Yes.
But really the second thing, and I think it's so important because we're a tree company, right? That's what we do outside of this podcast. And we're seeing that a lot of like HOAs and apartment complexes, they tend to defer maintenance because every year it is expensive, but it's so critical as we talk about defensible space in Zone 0. And so something that I think would be beneficial, if you could talk a little about it, is when you guys are going out to respond to a wildfire, how do you guys decide like what properties to defend? I know you talked about the program that you have is having the right gutters and roofing and so forth. But if we're just looking at vegetation and trees, is that something that plays a role in how you protect your properties?
Well, realistically, when CAL FIRE or any wildland agency comes in to defend properties, we are number one looking at the safety of our firefighters. So when we're looking at properties, we're really looking at the community, because we're normally coming in a strike team formation. A strike team formation is 1 chief officer and 5 engines. And so when we're coming into a situation, we'll have folks that are already on the incident that are giving us direction and orders to go start structure protection, is what we call it. And so what we do is, as a strike team, we go in and we're looking at the community. So if we're given a community or a set of streets to monitor, we're really looking at what is our access in and out. Is there electrical lines overhead? Is there overhanging trees? How long is it going to take if we deploy our lines to defend a structure or a street? What do we have? Are we safe? Are we in a safety area? And a safety area is where we can essentially deploy safely. So a safety area is usually where you can deploy without having to have all of your gear on. Temporary refuge areas, TFR, is a place we can retreat back to. Is that available to us? If it's not available to us, if it's not safe for us, we do a fire front following, where we'll bump along and protect the houses as the fire is going through. That all depends on what the weather's like. How fast is the wind blowing? Would we be able to help that? Or do we need to retreat and wait? But when we come up to a house, let's say we come up and we decide to do structure protection, we really are looking at our access in and out. Like I said, we're going to do a 360 around the house. What can we do to help us help this structure? And if we already have a Zone 0 and defensible space in place, that makes our job so much easier. And it makes us not have to stay there as long. We can bump to the next house. That's why we are so much touting, we call it hazard mitigation methodology, where we're including the entire community. So when we're doing our 360, we're looking up and down. What's up against the house? Can we move patios away? A lot of times people don't realize having extra cars or your RV or your boats are not good next to your house, because all you did is just put a fuel source next to the house with gasoline. So can we move that? Is that even doable? Can we move anything away that would assist that? Wood piles, patio furniture, on these fires we've been on, the firemen were throwing the patio cushions into the pool, which is a great idea because you're saving their patio cushions, but at least it's away from the house. Are the plants that they left out, are they movable? Can we move them away? Can we pick them up and move them away? Can we trim up trees real quick? That's something else that firemen can do. We have chainsaws on our engines. What else can we do? And that's the things that we're looking at when we go in to do structure protection. And if we walk into a house and we can't even get to the front door, we're going to have a hard time defending that house. We'll try our best, but that house is going to be a lot harder to defend than one that has defensible space clearance.
Well, you've got me thinking about, as you were talking, I'm like, what's around my house? I want you guys to be able to not have to fight with my bushes and shrubs, but I know my home is zero-scaped.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of rockery, a lot of river rock in my yard, no bark. But you had me thinking there for a second. Wait a minute, I may have that one tree.
Yeah, that's something else that we think about too, is the mulch. The mulch is probably the craziest thing. I know it looks fantastic around your house, up against your house, but if you could really do non-combustible material, like you said, the gravel, the decomposed granite, rock, anything that's not flammable, because that's something else that if they have time to do it, they can scrape the mulch away. But again, where are you going to put it when winds are blowing 20 to 30 miles an hour?
That's right. Well, this is a perfect segue to my next question, which is basically for our viewers, what can they do as homeowners or property owners? What can they do right now, today, to give their property the best chance at surviving a wildfire?
My number one thing that I tell folks is really sit down and think about your house on 4 sides. You can't just look at it from the front or the back. You got to really be looking at it from the front, the side, and the back. When we talk about defensible space, are there any trees overhanging your roof? Do you have spark arrestor on your fireplace? When you're looking at your trees, are they trimmed up to at least 6 feet so that you don't have any of those ladder fuels? Is there any dead or dying vegetation around your house that can be mitigated? Taking all that stuff out and really start thinking about fire smart landscaping. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as when you're looking at it, would it be an easy thing to start? Like the grasses, is that a good thing to be putting into your house close to your home? Maybe if you really like it, put it out into zone 1 or 2. The big thing with defensible space is creating islands of beauty, is what I like to call it. Don't have continuous lawn beds or, flower beds. Put little islands out. You can have that green grass. Try to stay away when you're in the rural areas of the astroturf, kind of turf grass, because that does catch on fire. But if you do want to use grass and you have a lot of vegetation, it has to be well watered. And then you have to take in consideration, are we in a drought years, or are we in a time where, it's pouring rain outside right now? Can you keep that maintained if you were on a drought? And if not, maybe we need to start thinking about maybe more drought tolerant plants. Looking at your siding. Do you have wood siding? Can you change it to stucco? Can you look at your topography of where your house is and look at the siding? That's kind of a home hardening thing. Is one of the things that we were trying to do with home hardening and we have accomplished is there was one side of one structure that was more susceptible to wildfire. So that was the side that they decided to put cement siding on it. And the great thing about that is now we have siding that actually looks like wood. So if you're really, heart set on board and batten, you can actually get cement board that looks like wood. So just looking at things like that and just really focusing on how your house sits, where would wildfires usually come from, and work on those. Windows is another, like we were just talking about before. Any home built after 2010 that are in those rural areas are required to have multi-pane windows. They're really focusing now on triple pane windows, but if you can, and they're more expensive, of course, but even double pane windows, the fires we've been on recently, the homes that survived had their first pane broken, but the second pane was still intact. And that pane was a tempered glass, which is what they say when you do that, is to make sure the one closest to the interior is tempered. But we're starting to do research now on those windows. Why did the house survive? Oh, it has one broken window, but there was still one intact. So if that particular home only had single pane, then that would have been an intrusion for the fire to get to, and that house wouldn't have survived. So that's another big thing. Vents, which I was talking about, also is a huge thing. The standard vents are usually a quarter to half inch. And in the wildland areas, we're focusing now on an eighth of an inch to 16th of an inch. And they have all sorts of vents on the market that are WUI approved. They also have ones that actually automatically close when heat is introduced to it. I don't know how much heat's got to get there for it to actually automatically close, but I think that's fantastic.
Wow.
So those are just some ideas.
Awesome.
That's crazy. Well, I think you touched on it, but I think it'd be really good for viewers. It's the thing people don't want to talk about, but it's inevitable. If you were stuck with a wildfire in your community and you're finding yourself in that unfortunate situation where you have to evacuate, what steps would you ask the homeowners or those that live in apartment complexes to do to protect their property?
Well, realistically, if you are having to evacuate, I hope that their area is already defensively, have defensible space precautions to it. But like I said before, just looking at the exterior and trying to move any type of flammable items away from the house, depending on how much time they have, can they get out some clippers out and cut down low hanging branches or remove any dead or dying vegetation? It's pretty much the same thing as if the fire wasn't coming. Make sure you have all your papers in order. That's a big thing. People always say they ran out with just the clothes on their back, and so hopefully if that is a threat that a fire is coming, that they make the decision to grab all of the things that mean most to them. But on the exterior with apartments, hopefully they do have the hardscape around them to protect their individual home. But for folks, like I was saying, making sure all of your vehicles are away from the house, if that's possible to do, to remove that extra combustible material that could catch the house on fire, storing away propane tanks, making sure that your patio cushions and furniture are stored away. I know a lot of people like to put their wood pile right next to their house because it's easy, because it's cold, of course. But trying to move that stuff away. If you have propane tanks, store those in your garage or anywhere that it can't be ignited, really. And that helps the firemen too. Yeah, that's stuff we'd be doing anyways.
I heard something, and it could be because I just overhear them when they're talking all the time at home, but should our viewers close their windows before leaving? Is that something that's true that needs to be done?
Yes, I absolutely think that's a huge component, especially, wildland fires are most of the time, for the exception of the one we had in January, are in the summertime. People forget to close their windows and close their blinds or close their curtains. That really is an important step. The other thing is, I don't know if I should say it or not, but keeping your door unlocked for the firemen. That's one thing. I hate to say it, but sometimes firefighters have to take refuge, and sometimes they take it in the house. So if something bad happens, the fire moves a different direction. I know we had a lot of problems with looters and stuff, but realistically, after the fire passes, hopefully we get people back in their homes. But yeah, windows is a huge thing. Like I said, that is the easiest access for wildfire to get into your home. It's the most susceptible. It's the most vulnerable part of your house. The interesting thing with the vent holes getting smaller, like I was talking about, the 1/8 and 16th of an inch, is now that homes are doing that, they actually have to have more vents in, because those vents are restricting the airflow into their house. And the whole point of the venting system is keeping airflow going through. So that's an important thing too. So if the homeowners have time to do that, that's an excellent way to protect your home as well.
That's helpful.
Very good.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. I really, we talk a lot about during the fire. We talked briefly about some of the things that we can do to help prevent with the landscaping and some fireproof materials. So for those who have to rebuild after a fire, maybe we can go in a little bit more detail, and maybe not as much detail, because we kind of touched on it. But could you give us some more smart choices when it comes to landscaping and reconstruction, smart reconstruction?
When folks have to rebuild, it's really important to utilize the resources. We have a whole bunch of resources, Building Back Better, on our websites for our home hardening. If you go to readyforfire.org, we have a lot of resources there. But really, when you're building back After a wildfire, it really is important to use those WUI determined products. Consider, if you had a wood sided house, now we need to start talking about what I was talking about before, the cement siding, the stucco. A lot of houses, when I was on the Palisades fire, we talked to one gentleman that lost his house in the Malibu fire, and he said, well, that's not going to happen. I'm going to fireproof my house. And so when we went back to it, he had a cement sided house. It was literally cement sided, triple pane windows. He had no eaves. That was another consideration, it was crazy. He said, I took every example that CAL FIRE gave to fireproof my house, and the house did survive. I think it had one cracked window.
Wow.
But where your house is sitting, like I was saying, the WUI products are not cheap, but they are definitely beneficial. And when we talk about all sides of your houses, when you're talking about roofs, you really want a Class A roof, which is a non-combustible roof. And that would be a metal roof, cement tile roof, Spanish tile roof. Anything that's non-combustible that you can put on your house is going to be your best defense. It's not an absolute guarantee that your house is going to survive, but you can do everything you can. And that is really looking at those components of your vents, making sure that you have those smaller opening vents, your gutters, your roof, your siding, all so very important. And to really take seriously that zone 0, making sure you don't have anything combustible up against your house is going to be your number one priority.
Wow. This is so great, Heather. I think our biggest thing for all of our listeners is if they want to take that deeper dive and get more guidance,
Yes.
are there any specific CAL FIRE tools, checklists, programs? I know you mentioned a website, but anything that we can, guide our clients to and our listeners to that really can help them take advantage and have the best possible chance of not being destroyed in a fire, right? That's really want to give them all the tools that they can use to be as proactive as possible.
Yeah. Where my website is fire.ca.gov/D space. That takes you directly to where you can request inspection. If you're in the SRA area, like I was saying, the state responsibility area, if you are not and you still put in a request for an inspection to come out and see what's wrong with your house, we do direct you to the appropriate department. We are in contact with every department in the state so that we make sure that we get that done. We also have great resources where you can take a survey, you put in all the components of your house. That's also on that website. It actually gives you a report back of all the things that would better your house. It asks, do you have vegetation up against your house? Well, why don't you think about this? Fire smart landscaping, home hardening. You can also go to osfm.ca.gov and go to prepare. Under that, it has a whole bunch of resources of preparing before a wildfire, the things you would need if in case of evacuation. It even talks about, for your pets. And we also have a huge home hardening under DSpace. You can go right there. There's a link for it there. And that gives you all of the retrofit guides. If you wanted to start off just by changing your vents, that's something small that you could do that makes a huge difference. Or if you have some money, but not a lot of money, but know that one side of your house needs a little extra help, maybe you can change your siding on that side of the house. And that gives you all the resources that you need. We also are in collaboration with the Fire Safe Council of California, and they actually have vendors and great resources on there as well. The Fire Safe Councils in our area are the ones, I'm sure we're going to talk about that later, but those are the ones that are actually doing the most work in your communities and have the grant funding to help you if you need help. So that's another great resource.
We love that. I know for us, A Plus Tree is part of the Fire Safe Council. And
Yes.
that's a lot of the resources that we can help is if you don't know what kind of defensible space you need, we do have certified arborists. And what we do, Heather, is we go out, we assess the properties, and then we provide recommendations to help. So that really is a great way to just continue to learn, be proactive. I think that's our biggest takeaway. Just be proactive, because at the end of the day, we have these wonderful people at CAL FIRE that are going to come out, but we want to give them the best chance to save your property, save your community, and making sure that they're safe, right? And so that's really important. So I know for for us, I mean, all of these resources are fantastic. I know you named a couple websites. We will absolutely link them at the end of the podcast so people can go check them out. We're going to put that on all of our A+ resources as well. We really just want to spread the word. I mean, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, we have a great new service that we are providing where we're working with all the nonprofits, fire safe councils. We're actually working with the CCCs, Fireways communities, where we are teaching those fire safe councils how to do qualified entity assessments, and they're defensible space assessments. They're not the actual inspection. And what that program really was created for was to get the community involved. If we can get the communities to all be defensible space protected, that is your best defense against oncoming wildfires. And what we do is my team goes out and they train the neighbors and communities to do these assessments. You get invited onto people's property. You don't just go and knock on the doors. And we go out and actually do a full defensible space and home hardening assessment of their home. And we give them recommendations of how to pass their inspection. We created it and started it in 2024, and we had trained almost 230 people throughout the state. So it's just kicking off. We're doing a lot of trainings, and it's very similar to our defensible space inspection. It just takes the inspection out of it because, once someone comes on your property with a badge on, it is not, you don't think it's as friendly. Trust me, we are all very friendly because us helping the community helps us back in return. It really does keep the firefighters safe. And if we can do something else to make the property owners more comfortable with getting their house in line, then that's the perfect opportunity. And the community is all for it. We have El Dorado County is very proactive with their defensible space program, and they have been one of our big success stories of their communities utilizing this resource.
That's awesome, Heather. Next week on our podcast, we actually have a owner of an insurance company that lives in El Dorado County. So he's going to be talking all about the importance of being a fire-wise community. So that was fantastic. Yes. It aligns perfectly around getting the support of the community. So this was so fantastic. It's been very insightful to learn so much about what your program does, how you guys are out there helping the people, just educating them. It's so important, and people don't realize that. And so I just want to thank you for taking the time to do this. For me, I learned so much. I know Buddy was nodding his head, so I know there was a ton. But really, we think our viewers are going to be so excited to just learn what to do, because there's always, in the news stories about what do I do? How do I protect my property? And you guys have so many resources. So we're very excited that you came on and took this time to meet with us. And thank you so much for doing that.
You're very welcome. And please don't be afraid to go to your local fire station. Your local fire departments are the ones that are coming out and protecting your house. Don't be afraid to talk to them. Don't be afraid when they come out to do inspections on your property.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Man, for our viewers out there, please check out the show notes for the links to all the resources that Heather mentioned today. If you found this episode helpful, share it with your neighbors, because community preparation makes all the difference. And I think Heather would agree with that.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Rooted in Care.
We have a fresh lineup of new episodes ready to drop. So tune in each week to hear people just like you share their experience and insights on how tree care impacts our daily lives. Subscribe to Rooted in Care. We're on Spotify, Apple, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Tell us what you thought of this episode by leaving a review, commenting, or look us up on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok.
This podcast is a plussed up production created in collaboration with Chorus Studios. Stay rooted out there.